What happens when a man who once protected his country can't even get a simple loan to protect his family's future? Sometimes the most heroic battles are fought not in distant lands, but in the sterile offices of everyday America. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus Thompson adjusted his worn baseball cap and approached the marble counter of First National Bank. At 52, his weathered hands told stories of hard work, while his steady gaze reflected a quiet determination that had carried him through 2 decades of military service and 10 years of civilian struggle. "I'm here about a small business loan," Marcus said to the receptionist, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to precision. She directed him to a glass-walled office where Bradley Morrison, the branch manager, sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Marcus's simple khakis and polo shirt. "Mr. Thompson," Bradley said, barely glancing up from his computer screen, "I see you're applying for a $50,000 loan for a landscaping business." His tone suggested he'd already made up his mind. "Yes, sir. I've been working for other companies for a decade now, building a solid reputation. My clients specifically request me for their projects." Marcus placed a worn folder on the desk, filled with testimonials and photographs of meticulously maintained gardens and restored properties. Before continuing, give this story a like and subscribe to discover more tales of unsung heroes whose true worth shines brightest when others fail to see it. Bradley flipped through the folder with theatrical disinterest. "Your credit score is adequate, but your current income is inconsistent. Landscaping is seasonal work, Mr. Thompson. Banks need stability." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Frankly, at your age, starting a new business seems optimistic." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I'm not starting from scratch. I have existing contracts worth over $200,000 annually. 3 homeowners associations have already signed maintenance agreements for next year." "Promises aren't collateral," Bradley replied dismissively. "Do you have property to secure the loan? Stocks, bonds, any real assets?" "I have my home, but it's already mortgaged. My savings are going into initial equipment purchases." Marcus's fingers unconsciously traced the edge of his sleeve, where a small portion of black ink was barely visible beneath the fabric. Bradley's expression grew more condescending. "Mr. Thompson, I'll be direct. You're a high-risk applicant. Manual labor, inconsistent income, limited assets. This bank can't justify such a loan based on gardening." The word dripped with disdain. The dismissal hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd survived firefights in Afghanistan, led men through impossible situations, earned medals for valor that now sat forgotten in a dusty box at home. Yet here he was, being treated like a financial liability because his calloused hands grew roses instead of shuffling papers. "I understand your concerns," Marcus said, gathering his documents. "But landscaping isn't just about cutting grass. I design therapeutic gardens for veteran centers, create sustainable water management systems, restore damaged ecosystems. My work has meaning beyond profit margins." "I'm sure it does," Bradley said, already turning back to his computer. "But meaning doesn't pay back loans. You'll need to explore other options, perhaps a cosigner with better credit, or consider scaling back your ambitions." Marcus stood slowly, his military bearing evident despite the civilian clothes. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison." His voice carried no bitterness, only the quiet dignity of someone accustomed to facing rejection with grace. As he walked toward the door, Marcus noticed an elderly gentleman in an expensive suit waiting in the lobby's leather chairs. The man's sharp eyes followed Marcus's movement, and something in that gaze suggested recognition, not of his face, but of something deeper, something that spoke to shared experiences and mutual respect. The automatic doors closed behind Marcus, but the story was far from over. Sometimes, the most important conversations happen between people who understand that true worth isn't measured in credit scores or bank balances, but in the scars we carry and the sacrifices we've made for something greater than ourselves. Harold Ashford had been chairman of First National Bank for 37 years, and in that time, he developed an uncanny ability to read people. As he watched the veteran walk away from Bradley Morrison's office, something stirred in his memory, not a specific moment, but a familiar rhythm in the man's movements, a particular way of carrying oneself that spoke of military discipline. "Bradley," Harold called out, his voice cutting through the bank's ambient chatter. "A word in my office, please." The younger man appeared moments later, still wearing his self-satisfied expression. "Yes, Mr. Ashford. I just finished with another loan application, fairly straightforward rejection." "The gentleman who just left, tell me about his application." Harold settled behind his desk, fingers drumming thoughtfully on the polished surface. "Marcus Thompson, landscaper wanting $50,000 for equipment, marginal credit, unstable income, no substantial collateral, textbook decline." Bradley shrugged. "I probably saved us from a future default." Harold nodded slowly. "What did you learn about his background?" "Not much relevant to banking. Some military service, I think, but that was decades ago. Ancient history doesn't pay current bills." Bradley's confidence wavered slightly under Harold's steady gaze. "Military service," Harold repeated. "Which branch? How long?" "I didn't ask for specifics. Does it matter?" "Veterans get plenty of government programs if they need help." Harold stood and moved to his window, watching Marcus climb into a battered pickup truck in the parking lot. "Bring me his file." "All of it." 10 minutes later, Harold spread Marcus Thompson's documents across his desk. The credit report showed the expected struggles, periods of lower income, medical bills, the financial stress common to many veterans transitioning to civilian life. But buried in the supplementary information was a detail that made Harold's breath catch. "Bradley, do you see this notation here? 2 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star with V-Device, Army Special Forces." Harold's voice carried a weight that made his manager shift uncomfortably. "Yes, sir, but like I said, military service doesn't guarantee loan repayment." Harold walked to a framed photograph on his credenza, a much younger version of himself in marine dress blues. "I served in Vietnam." "Do you know what a Bronze Star with V-Device means?" "Some kind of medal." "It means he earned a Bronze Star for heroic achievement in combat. The V-Device specifically denotes valor in the face of enemy action." Harold's voice grew quietly intense. "Special Forces operators don't get those medals for showing up, Bradley. They earn them by doing things most people can't imagine, in places most people pray they never have to go." The parking lot was nearly empty now, but Harold could still see Marcus sitting in his truck, probably gathering himself before driving home to explain another rejection to his family. 2 Purple Hearts means he was wounded in action twice, but chose to return to duty, Harold continued. "This man didn't just serve his country, he bled for it multiple times and kept going back. And you dismissed him because his hands are dirty from honest work." Bradley's face had gone pale. "Sir, I was just following standard lending practices." "Standard practices?" Harold turned back to the window. "Do you know what I see when I look at that man? I see someone who's spent the last 10 years proving he can adapt, overcome, and build something meaningful from nothing. I see someone whose word means something because he's been tested in ways that would break most people." The silence stretched between them until Harold spoke again. "That truck he's driving probably has 200,000 miles on it, but I guarantee it's maintained better than most luxury cars. His client testimonials don't just praise his work, they praise his character. This isn't a risk assessment we failed. This is a judgment call we got completely wrong." Harold picked up his phone. "I want you to call Mr. Thompson immediately. Tell him the bank would like to reconsider his application, and we'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss terms that work for both parties." "Sir, if you're sure." "Bradley, that man spent 20 years protecting people who never knew his name, never saw his face, never thanked him for keeping them safe at night. The least we can do is protect his dream of building something meaningful with his own hands." As Bradley hurried back to his office to make the call, Harold remained at his window, thinking about second chances, hidden valor, and the quiet heroes who walk among us, unrecognized and undervalued, until someone takes the time to truly see them. Marcus was 3 miles from the bank when his phone rang. The unknown number almost went to voicemail before he decided to answer, expecting another sales call or debt collector. "Mr. Thompson, this is Bradley Morrison from First National Bank. I apologize for bothering you, but we'd like you to return to discuss your loan application further." Marcus pulled over, his heart racing despite his attempts to remain calm. "Mr. Morrison, I thought we covered everything. You were pretty clear about the bank's position." "Yes, well, circumstances have changed. Our chairman would like to meet with you personally. Would it be possible for you to come back today?" "Today," Marcus glanced at his watch. "It's nearly 4 o'clock. Mr. Ashford specifically requested to see you before close of business. He's very interested in your application." An hour later, Marcus found himself in the same glass office, but this time Bradley Morrison's demeanor had completely changed. The condescension was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. "Mr. Thompson, I owe you an apology. I should have taken more time to understand your background before making a hasty decision." Bradley's words came out in a rehearsed rush. "Our chairman, Mr. Ashford, would like to speak with you personally." Harold Ashford entered the office with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, but his eyes held a warmth that immediately put Marcus at ease. He was tall, silver-haired, and moved with the careful precision of an older man who'd maintained his military posture throughout decades of civilian life. "Mr. Thompson," Harold extended his hand. "Harold Ashford, chairman of First National, thank you for coming back." "Sir," Marcus stood and accepted the handshake, recognizing something familiar in the older man's grip, firm, direct, meaningful. "Please sit." Harold took the chair beside Marcus rather than behind the desk. "I understand you served in the Army, Special Forces." "Yes, sir, 20 years, 2 deployments to Afghanistan." Harold nodded. "Marines myself. Vietnam 68 to 70, different war, same dedication." He paused, studying Marcus with keen eyes. "May I ask about the tattoo on your arm? I caught a glimpse when you were reaching for your documents earlier." Marcus hesitated, then slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing a detailed tattoo of the Special Forces crest surrounded by names and dates, fallen comrades memorialized in ink and carried forward in memory. Harold's expression grew solemn as he read the inscription beneath the crest: "Do oppresso liber, and all gave some gave all." "These are your teammates?" Harold asked quietly. "My brothers who didn't make it home." Marcus's voice carried the weight of survivors' guilt and enduring love. "I carry them with me in everything I do." "And now you want to build something meaningful with your hands, create life instead of the other things we had to do." Marcus looked up sharply, recognizing the understanding in Harold's voice. "Yes, sir, gardens don't judge. They just respond to care, consistency, and time. Every plant that thrives, every space that brings peace to someone, it feels like making amends." Harold was quiet for a long moment. 20 years ago, I struggled to transition back to civilian life. The bank was failing, my marriage was rocky, and I couldn't understand why nothing felt significant anymore. A Korean War veteran took a chance on me, gave me a loan when other banks wouldn't. He said something I've never forgotten. "The same qualities that make a good soldier make a good businessman. Discipline, loyalty, attention to detail, and the ability to lead when others give up." "That man saw something in you," Marcus observed. "Just like I see something in you." Harold leaned forward. "Your credit score doesn't reflect your character. Your savings account doesn't measure your worth. But these testimonials, this dedication to your craft, this commitment to honoring fallen friends by building something beautiful, that tells me everything I need to know about your ability to succeed." Bradley Morrison had been silent throughout the exchange, watching his chairman conduct business in a way that had nothing to do with standard lending practices and everything to do with human judgment. "Mr. Thompson," Harold continued, I'd like to personally approve your loan application. $50,000, prime rate, with flexible payment terms for the first year to account for seasonal fluctuations. But I have one condition. Yes, sir. I want you to create a memorial garden here at the bank, something that honors all veterans, visible to everyone who enters this building. Not just as a customer requirement, but because this community needs to remember that freedom isn't free, and the people who paid that price deserve more than forgotten gratitude. Marcus felt his eyes sting with unexpected emotion. Sir, I would be honored. 3 weeks later, Marcus Thompson arrived at First National Bank at dawn, his truck loaded with carefully selected plants, stones, and materials that would transform the bank's sterile front landscape into something meaningful. The Memorial Garden project had grown beyond Harold's original vision. Word had spread through the veteran community, and volunteers appeared each morning to help with the heavy work. Sunrise crew reporting for duty called out James Wheeler, a Vietnam vet who'd become Marcus's unofficial second-in-command. Behind him came Maria Santos, an Air Force veteran who owned a local nursery and had donated dozens of plants, and Robert Kim, a Gulf War medic who brought coffee and coordination skills that kept the volunteer workforce organized. Marcus surveyed the space they'd marked out, a curved area beside the bank's main entrance that would serve as both a living memorial and a peaceful refuge for anyone seeking a moment of quiet reflection. The design honored military precision while embracing organic growth, with pathways that encouraged visitors to move thoughtfully through spaces dedicated to different branches of service. Today we install the centerpiece, Marcus announced, gesturing toward a polished granite monument that had arrived the previous evening. The stone bore a simple inscription. In honor of those who served, their sacrifice lives on in the peace they gave us. Harold Ashford emerged from the bank carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. Over the past weeks, he'd become a regular presence at the construction site, sometimes offering suggestions, but more often simply watching the transformation with quiet satisfaction. How are we progressing, Mr. Thompson? Ahead of schedule and under budget, Marcus replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. The community response has been incredible. Mrs. Patterson from the Garden Club donated the entire perennial collection, and the high school's landscaping program is sending students next week to learn installation techniques. What about your business preparations? Marcus smiled. 3 new contracts signed this week. Apparently, people who see quality work want to hire the person who did it. I've got projects scheduled through next spring already. Harold nodded approvingly. Leadership has a way of attracting followers. Success breeds success. As they spoke, Bradley Morrison approached hesitantly. His relationship with Marcus had evolved from dismissive to respectful, though the change clearly made him uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson, I wanted to update you on your loan paperwork. Everything's processed, and your first payment isn't due for 60 days. Also, he paused, looking genuinely uncertain. I've been thinking about what you said regarding the meaning of your work. I wondered if you might consider taking on a small project at my home. My wife has been wanting to create a butterfly garden for our daughter. Marcus studied the younger man's face, recognizing something he'd seen in his own mirror during the difficult transition years, someone trying to find purpose beyond profit margins. Butterfly gardens are special projects, Marcus said finally. They require understanding the local ecosystem, choosing plants that support the complete life cycle, creating habitats that nurture rather than just attract. It's not quick work. I understand. I'm hoping to learn something about patience, I guess, about creating something that matters. Harold watched the exchange with interest. Bradley's been asking questions about veteran services, community investment, ways the bank can contribute beyond standard business practices. Small steps, Marcus acknowledged, but meaningful ones. As the morning progressed, the memorial garden began to take its final shape. Veterans worked alongside civilians, sharing stories and expertise while creating something beautiful from empty ground. Marcus moved between work groups, offering guidance and encouragement, but mostly letting people discover their own connection to the project. "You know what I love about this?" Maria Santos said as she carefully positioned a memorial rose bush. "Every plant here represents hope. Every flower that blooms is proof that beauty can grow from sacrifice, that death can nurture life." Marcus knelt beside her, adding compost to the soil around the rose's roots. "That's the real victory. Not just remembering what was lost, but creating what can grow from that loss, making something that serves the future instead of just mourning the past." By noon, the memorial was complete. The granite centerpiece stood surrounded by carefully chosen plants that would bloom in succession throughout the growing season, ensuring that color and life would always mark this space of remembrance. Benches invited contemplation, while pathways encouraged movement through different areas dedicated to reflection, celebration, and hope. Harold stood before the completed memorial with obvious emotion. "It's perfect. More than I envisioned, exactly what this community needed." Marcus wiped soil from his hands, looking at the gathered crowd of volunteers, bank employees, and curious passers-by who'd stopped to witness the transformation. This is what happens when people invest in each other instead of just analyzing risk. Beautiful things grow from trust, patience, and shared purpose. The memorial garden was complete, but it represented the beginning rather than the end of Marcus's business, of community partnerships, and of recognition that true value often comes from the most unexpected sources. 6 months later, Marcus Thompson stood in the same bank lobby where he'd once faced rejection, but now the space felt entirely different. Through the large windows, the memorial garden bloomed with spring colors, drawing visitors throughout the day who came to sit, remember, and find peace among the carefully tended plants. "Mr. Thompson," a young woman approached with a nervous smile. "I'm Jennifer Martinez, and I'm here about a small business loan. They told me to speak with you first." Marcus looked puzzled until Harold Ashford appeared, wearing a grin that suggested this conversation was long overdue. "Marcus, I'd like you to meet our newest small business advisor. Congratulations, that is, if you accept the position." Marcus set down the watering can he'd been carrying. His morning ritual of tending the memorial garden had become an unofficial part of his bank relationship, but this was unexpected. "Half-time consultant position," Harold explained. "We've had 17 small business loan applications in the past 6 months, specifically requesting the Marcus Thompson review process. Apparently, word has spread that First National has someone who evaluates character alongside credit scores." Jennifer Martinez stepped forward eagerly. "I'm applying for startup funding for a catering business. I'm a single mother, limited credit history, but I've been cooking for community events for 5 years. Someone told me you understand the value of work that doesn't always show up on financial statements." Marcus looked at her application folder, recognizing the same nervous hope he'd felt months earlier. "Tell me about your catering experience. What makes your food special?" "I cook traditional Mexican recipes my grandmother taught me, but I adapt them for people with dietary restrictions. Diabetic versions, gluten-free options, heart-healthy modifications. I believe good food should bring people together regardless of their medical limitations." "Cooking with purpose," Marcus nodded. "That's not just about profit, that's about serving your community in a meaningful way." Harold watched the interaction with satisfaction. "Jennifer, Mr. Thompson will review your application and provide a recommendation to our loan committee. He has an excellent track record for identifying successful candidates." As Jennifer left to gather additional documentation, Harold and Marcus walked toward the memorial garden together. "I never expected this," Marcus admitted. 6 months ago, I was just trying to start a landscaping business." 6 months ago, you were trying to build something meaningful with your hands," Harold corrected. "The landscaping was just the method. Now you're helping other people build their dreams while continuing to grow your own business. Same mission, expanded scope." The garden was thriving. Spring bulbs had given way to summer perennials, and the fall plantings were already showing strong growth. More importantly, the space had become a community gathering place where people from all backgrounds came to reflect, remember, and find inspiration. Mr. Thompson, Bradley Morrison, jogged across the parking lot, his tie loosened and his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "I wanted to catch you before you left. Sarah's butterfly garden is incredible. She spends hours out there learning about caterpillars and plant relationships. My wife says it's changed how our daughter thinks about nature and responsibility." "And how has it changed how you think about things?" Marcus asked. Bradley paused, considering the question seriously. "It's taught me that investment isn't just about financial return. Sometimes you put resources into something because it makes the world better, and the return is measured in ways that don't show up on quarterly reports." Harold smiled. "Bradley's been our most improved loan officer this year. His approval rate has increased, but more importantly, his default rate has decreased. Turns out that understanding people as humans rather than credit scores makes for better business decisions." As they spoke, Maria Santos arrived with a small group of high school students who'd been working on the memorial garden as part of their community service graduation requirement. "Mr. Marcus," called out Tony, a senior who'd initially approached the project with typical teenage reluctance, "we finished installing the new native plant section. Mrs. Santos says it'll provide habitat for indigenous butterflies and birds while requiring minimal water maintenance." "Sounds like you learned something about sustainable landscaping," Marcus observed. "I learned that taking care of something bigger than yourself feels different than just working for a paycheck," Tony replied. "I'm thinking about studying environmental science in college. Maybe I can figure out how to help other communities create spaces like this." Marcus felt a familiar warmth, the same satisfaction he'd once found in military service, the knowledge that his actions contributed to something larger and more lasting than personal achievement. As evening approached,